Welcome. Thank you for coming. I am playing the role of Mike Mann from Zia Consulting today. My name is Ryan McVeigh. I am our Vice President of Sales, and Mike had to catch a flight out earlier than expected, so I'm going to help introduce Andrew Sosa today from Church Pension Group, and he'll share with you a story about their experience in going paperless, and then following Andrew will be Beeken, who is from Edmonton Public Schools in Canada, and will share the same story and their experiences.
All right, thanks. My name is Andrew Sosa. I'm the Business Content Group Lead for the Church Pension Group. Basically, the Church Pension Group is a benefit organization for the Episcopal Church. So we service the lay and the clergy of the Episcopal Church. We're not-for-profit. We're headquartered in New York City. We actually just, over the summer, we moved from 39th and 5th down to 34th and Madison. The majority of our employees are located in New York, but we do have remote and virtual offices across the country, as well as an office in Hong Kong for our investments arm. There's 5 business units in the Church Pension Group: the Pension Fund, Church Life, Medical Trust, Church Insurance, and Church Publishing. And we have over $9 billion in assets under management. So people pray in good times and bad, so it's good for us. So in 2006, it was the first time we started thinking about going paperless. Basically, we had a very paper-loving environment. People love to print, people love to take screenshots, and it was management saw that it was a risk because we had all our files centrally located in the building, all in folders, and with Sandy, 9/11, blackouts, anything can happen, and once we lose those files, we lose everything. It was also pretty labor intensive. Anytime someone wanted to get a file or document for a client, they would have to call the records department, request a file. The records department would bring the folder up to the business unit. They would look through all the folder, take out a sheet of paper, maybe put it back in or not, and send it back down to records. And also, square footage in Manhattan is it's not too cheap. So having a bunch of folders and boxes with documents is it wasn't really what we wanted to do. So there was an initiative for senior management said, listen, we have to do something. We got to make sure we can have these files electronically. Let's look at backfiling everything we have, and let's build a day-forward process for our processes. So where we are today. Just over the summer, we upgraded to Alfresco 4.1.4. We upgraded from 3.4.2. For me, it went rather smoothly. We were on time and on budget, but probably I can't say the same thing for Mike Mann's developers or Rich's development. They were probably up all night working through it. We have around 2.3 million documents in the repository, 123 work sites. We are very Alfresco share friendly. We'd have a lot of sites that people go in directly into Alfresco. And that 123 work sites is a little bit misleading because initially when we rolled it out, we allowed users to basically create their own sites, so they sort of kind of get the look and feel of it and buy into the hype. But we pretty much have, I would say, around 50 sites that we exclusively use daily and monthly. We have 12 indexing profilers, which is an application that runs that interfaces with Alfresco to add metadata to documents and process them. Our integration points are we use Kofax to capture our scanning as well as our e-faxes and our emails. We also integrate with Oracle CRM and Oracle Financials and Siebel, and as well as with DocuMaker. DocuMaker is an application that you use for mass mailings or like on-demand documents. So these are some of the processes that we saw that we could pretty much change them to a paperless environment. The bottom 4, I'll get into more detail with some screenshots on the processes. But so the payroll reports. initially, the way that the payroll department worked was that they had to produce around 18 payroll reports per month. So they would basically print out those 18 reports, and it would go pretty much to 3 individuals per each payroll report. So we're printing out, I don't know, 75 documents of these reports, and then the payroll manager is basically manually handing them over to the individuals. One of the senior VPs came in and said, "Why can't we use ECM for this?" And that was brilliant. And so what we created a site where every month the payroll department can upload the reports, and an email notification goes out to whoever is responsible for that report with a link to the document where they can click it and then open it up right on the PDF. The AP Invoices is pretty much one of our first sites that we set up. Basically, it's used to manage our vendor invoices. There's still some work that we want to kind of improve, because on the front end, when an invoice comes in, it would go to the manager of that vendor. They would sign off on it, send it down to scanning. The scanners would scan it through, and that's it with the paper. And then it would go to a folder within Alfresco where we would use a profiling tool. The AP group would have dual screens, so they would be inputting the information of the invoice into Oracle, and then go back into Alfresco into a profiler where they would basically look up what they just typed in, and that would map all the metadata from CRM into Alfresco, and then it would process that invoice into the vendor folder, and at the same time create a link with an Oracle workflow for the approval process. So once the finance group gets it, they can click on the link to view the invoice and approve it. So these last 4 sites, I have some screenshots for these. So this is what we call the enterprise profiler, and we use it for our customer engagement group. We just recently rolled this out probably a few weeks ago. So right now what's happening is any mail, any emails, or any e-faxes that get sent to our call center basically gets put into an Alfresco folder for the operators to basically fill in and process the document. We have a lookup, so the lookups are going into our customer database. So in this case, a user would go in, type in the last name. It would populate a box. If it's a common name like John Smith, they can even filter down deeper, select the client, and then it interfaces again to see all the existing cases that could be for this client. So the operator can, if she sees that, or he sees that this document is associated with something that already exists, they can attach it to that already pre-existing case in Oracle, or they can go ahead and create a brand new case. Either or, they select the document type and subtype, they can add notes, and then basically process a document. When they process a document, basically the document goes into taxonomy to get stored under the client's folder, as well as it sends a message over to CRM to create or update the case. So it puts it in the operations queue for whichever business unit this document is for. We have something very nice that Zia did for us with the copy split function. There was a problem when people usually mail stuff or email stuff, is that they send documents, multiple documents within maybe one envelope or one email that are 2 different things that you have, 2 different action items. So let's say you get a beneficiary form and a address change form. This allows the operator to basically split that document in 2 electronically instead of having to print it out, rescan it. And this is how it looks. Basically, you have the option to split it out as many times as you want, copy it, and delete the current record, the current document that came in. Also, what it does, it locks those documents that were split or copied so no other operator can basically go into those documents, and only so there won't be any confusion or anyone stepping on anyone's foot if the document is split. Okay, so this is for our account reconciliation. It's for our finance department. We have roughly around 650 accounts that have to be reconciled every month. The manual process was they would basically produce these reconciliations. They would print out also supporting documents, and then they would head it over to the manager of finance to approve or not approve. There would be a ton of printing involved in this because usually there is always some type of change involved. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a site where these accountants can upload the account reconciliations with the supporting documentation and basically go through a workflow where it gets approved or not approved. So basically, this screenshot is from once the document was uploaded into the site, they start the workflow on the actual reconciliation. Then there's a table connected both to the BU and the account number, so there's no fat fingering chance. And then they can also add here they can add the supporting documentation along with the reconciliation. And then there's a manual step where they would select the manager that they want to approve the recon. Once they set that, basically the manager would get a task on Alfresco Share. They would view it, they will click on it, and here they have the option basically to view the document and view any supporting document. In this scenario, I didn't put any supporting documents in, but they could basically view it. If it's anything like Enron, they'll reject it. If it's good to go, they'll go ahead and approve it. If it's rejected, what happens is that the reconciliation document is automatically deleted from the folder, and a message is sent out to the person that prepared it and uploaded it, telling them that it's been rejected and they have to do a change on it. If it's approved, the document basically gets converted into a PDF. It gets locked, and it gets the electronic signature of both the person that prepared it and approved it. So basically, once you have a document, a PDF with a certain reconciliation number, you can't ever produce another workflow off that same recon. So this is a way that we have a controlled way that no one can basically change files once the document is created. This is a performance support tool that Zia helped us put together. It's a little bit different than a lot of the sites that we are sort of used to. It's more like it sort of looks like an intranet site. Basically, we use this tool to support the call center. Just due to the environment of a call center, there's a lot of turnover. So you want to make sure that when you're talking to clients, your call center members are giving the same message no matter who they get on the phone. So what this site does is, the first thing in the morning, when the call center operators get in, they basically log into the site. They can see on the right important business period. So let's say it's open enrollment. They can see what's going on in the company, what's happening, and the type of season that it is. There's also critical news for the customer, and that critical news is managed by the call center manager to post daily. There's also links to internal and external systems. So if they're on this tool and the client calls and they need to get into CRM or our other internal systems, they can basically take that link and it takes them to that system. And then we have all the job aids. So instead of having papers and quick hits or tips on their desk, they can basically go here, click it, and it'll open up the document. This has become vital because a lot of our call centers employees are working from remote offices or virtual offices. So this cuts down on the paper that we have to print out and send to them, and it's a quick way to communicate to the whole team. Yeah. And so also with this performance support tool, honestly, I didn't think it was going to be a hit, but apparently a lot of the other business units and support units within the CPG had a look at this, and they want to basically recreate one for their own groups. So we're looking probably a couple next steps in the upcoming year to basically recreate this and theme it after whichever business unit or support unit is looking into it. External audit. Everyone loves getting audited. So we had a lot of problems with our interim audits and year-end audits. Basically, what was happening was that the auditors were either emailing requests or calling or sending like post-its, like I need this type of document, I need this, I need that, and a lot of stuff got lost in translation and in transition. So our manager of our external audit site within Alfresco, where basically the auditors can go into, put in their request, and then the business unit or whoever gets assigned to it will fulfill it by submitting the document. So we started doing this around probably around 2009, and it's become like a vital tool for our auditing. All the links you see in the middle of the page, those are all the different business units we have that an auditor would go into to basically put in a request. There's also the task dashboard. Let's see if I have that. So this gives a quick look into what's not completed, what's completed, what has the auditor seen, what hasn't the auditor seen, and if it's either open or closed. So it gives our external audit manager a quick view on who is not doing what and what has to get done. So this is the tasks for the BU. So this is basically from that initial first screen. If you click into one of the business units, this is where you're led into. Here is where the auditor can basically go ahead and add a task in to a task. So here is where the auditor is the task, basically name it. In this case, Alfresco Summit, and the description of the request would be send me the agenda, or send me a balance sheet, or send me some type of record for a client. They would also post a due date. They would assign it to an individual or a few individuals, and then write any corresponding notes. We also have the option of giving a reminder to whoever it's assigned to. So once that's all created and they click on create, the task gets emailed to whoever is assigned to it to fulfill it. And then submitting the task. So if I was assigned the task, I would be able to go ahead and click submit. And from the drop-down, from the external task list, that shows all the open tasks that are associated with this business unit. So you're always guaranteed to associate a document with the task. And you can upload any type of document and as many documents as you want. So, future. In 2020, we're looking to upgrade to 4. Mainly our business is records management. Plate probably for the last 4 or 5 years, and that accomplished, and hopefully we're also going to look at ways to improve the performance, speed of we use share. So a lot of users sometimes complain that the speed between going to different pages takes a long time, and we're going to continue the 2006 initiative to try to finish up the back file and create a processes for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll do Q&A at the end, so we'll go ahead and let Leah do her presentation now.
So about 6 years ago, I got a very angry phone call from a principal. She was really mad. She was really angry because she'd put a critical document in a student record and it had gone missing. And she needed that document to get extra funding for a special needs student. And because I'm in charge of student records for my school board, it was my fault. And I don't know how you react when someone's angry with you unexpectedly. I tend to do the woman thing. It's, oh my God, it's my fault. I must have done something wrong. Oh my God. But as she was going on, I started thinking, wait a minute. There's over 200 schools. I provide direction to staff in those 200 schools about how to manage the student record, but I'm not their direct supervisor. I really have no controls over whether or not they follow the rules regarding the student record. So as the phone call continued, I kind of moved out of the, oh my God, it's my fault, to, wait a minute. But I don't know if you've ever dealt with an angry person on the phone, but getting defensive or getting angry doesn't help. So in the end, I just said, you know, I understand why you're upset about this. This document cost you $1,500 to have done. You must have it to get extra funding for this student. The psychologist who wrote it isn't available for another 3 months, so you can't just get it redone again, even if you had the money. And she had personally put it in the record, so she kind of felt personally offended it was missing. So I said, let me find out what happened, and I'll call you back. So I started calling around regarding this particular student, and the city I work in, Edmonton, is sort of a hub, and there are a lot of northern communities, and a lot of students come to us from northern Alberta. And this particular student actually went back and forth from a northern school board to us every 6 months or so. So I went, oh, wait a minute. So I called this other school board, and I talked to my counterpart. And do you remember student X? Oh, yeah, sure, he's here every 6 months. I said, yeah. Do you remember his student record? Yeah, I packaged it up and mailed it to you guys last week. Didn't you get it? Yeah, we got it. Do you remember this particular document that was in the student record? Oh, yeah, I remember that document. That's a really important document. I said, yeah, it is. Do you happen to know where it is? Yep, it's in the filing cabinet right beside me. It's in the filing cabinet right beside you? Yeah, it's locked. That's great. Why is it there? Well, it's a really important document. I didn't want to lose it. In Alberta, the student record's a provincial record, and it's exchanged between school boards on request. That's part of the law in Alberta, right? But she sort of interpreted that to mean only the unimportant documents get moved back and forth. The important stuff, she's going to skim off and keep in her locked filing cabinet, right? So after she and I had a discussion about the law in Alberta, and she decided she would fax me those documents and send me the hard copy ones by courier, I thought, this isn't a problem I can solve in the paper world. I can't solve this. I have to change the game. I can't play it this way anymore. I can't control what people do across the province with these critical documents. And that's when I had my aha moment that paper just isn't working for us anymore. We have to do something different. So that was back in 2007, and so I started making the big pitch. We've got to go digital with this. We have to have a digital student record. And I eventually got, you know, the powers that be on side. And we chose Alfresco as our repository, mainly because it was open source. And we knew we had to have it connect to a lot of legacy systems, so we had to have something we could really work with in the system. And that was a very exciting, challenging time because I had basically no budget. I wasn't allowed to train anybody because nobody has time for training. I had one programmer. He and I together had to make this work. But you know, the good news is that 7 years later or whatever, it's been a brilliant success. It's been a game changer for our organization to have that record be digital. It wasn't easy. It was quite the journey, and I'm actually not going to talk about that journey. If you're interested, I'll give it a couple hours and I'll talk to you about how we made that happen and made it work. But it's been a huge success. It's been wonderful. And I did an ROI for our people up the line. And we're saving $1.5 million a year by doing this. Like, it's huge for the school board that we're doing this. You know what it is with ROIs, though? Have you ever done an ROI? It becomes old news very quickly, doesn't it? It's what have you done for me lately? Yeah, that's great, but, you know, what's new with you? So I want to show you what's new with me. So this is just some stuff about us. We have about 80,000 students. We have 14,000 users of our digital student record, and they're all tied to the students that they teach. So we have kind of a nightly synchronization process. That was key for us. And the content for the system, we basically have like 6 major ways the content gets in to the digital student record, but wherever possible, we try to keep digital. So we don't want to be printing off stuff so we can scan it. That's a huge waste of time. And currently, we have about 1 million documents in our repository. And it was a point-forward deployment. We couldn't afford to scan all of our paper files, right? So we just are waiting for those students to graduate, and gradually the residual paper is moving out of the system. But we're retiring all the paper files this year. So that's really exciting. So what's next? And this, I love this picture. This is my dog, Remy, and this is my older dog, Murphy. And some days I feel like Remy, and some days I feel like Murphy. When I started, I was much more like Remy. 7 years in, I feel a lot more like Murphy, like, oh my God, what else? What next? But we still had a problem, because even though we've solved our problem with the digital student record, we're still required to transfer those records to other school boards on demand. They're not digital. They're still doing everything in a paper world, right? So what we've been doing is printing off all our digital content so we could stick it in a folder, so we could stick it in an envelope and stick stamps on it so we could mail it out. And this was becoming more and more onerous because we had more and more of our documents as digital documents. So how do you transfer digital records to other organizations? They're not part of you when everyone else is using paper files. So this was the challenge. And I had a new programmer at this time, and I said, can we figure out a way that we can securely transfer these digital records as digital records with people that we don't know? Like, how do you do that? How do you authenticate people who aren't part of your organization? How do you make that work? So he went away and he thought about it, and he came back about 2 weeks later, and he said, milk chutes. Milk chutes. You guys look puzzled. Do you remember there used to have these things where the milkman would come by and he'd open a little door in the wall of your house, and he would take out your empty glass milk jar, and then he'd put in the full milk jar, and he'd close it on his side, and you could open it on your side and pull it out? Anybody remember those? You remember them, okay. Maybe it's got to be over 50 phenomenon. We used to always keep our pea shooters in there. But anyway, yeah, obviously I'm really dating myself here. I said, what do you mean milk chutes? And he said, what we do is we create an envelope for each request. And they have a key and we have a key. And when they make the request, we give them the key. And then when we put the content out, we notify them that it's there, and then they can come and open the door and take it out. So we're not letting them in our firewall, which we weren't willing to do. We don't know who these people are. We deal with school boards around the world, right? But we wanted to give them a way to create a request, and when we're satisfied it's a valid request, we can put the content in and then they can pull it out. Does this make sense? I'll try and show you what it looks like. So this is where I have to go to the demo. How do I do that here? Okay, so we created this out-facing website for Edmonton Public Schools, and there's a big blurb here saying, don't request records unless you're entitled to them, et cetera, et cetera. And we were also now sharing with our health board. So this is a way we share our digital student record with Alberta Health Services. And boy, that was a story. But anyway, you come here and you read all this blurb. Nobody reads anyway. They just go to new request. So they click on New Request, and they had originally put in a Captiva here, you know, with the word that's all curly, and you have to try and read it. I hate those. I can't read those. So I said to the programmer, give me something that I can see and it's not going to throw me for a loop. So they came up with this one, which I quite like. And one of the challenges, we have no idea what systems the people out there are using, right? What are their operating systems? What browser are they using? We don't know. So we had to make this work with everything. But basically the way this works is we say, okay, if you're requesting a student record, you have to tell us what province you're in. So let's say they're from Alberta. So they pick Alberta. And what city? Well, let's say they're from, well, let's go with Ardrossan. That's my hometown. And now, what school? And we have a database here of all the schools of Canada. So they're going to find their school here. Because the way you request a record is because you're a school. That's what gives you the authority to request. So let's say it's Holy Redeemer Catholic School. And you notice what filled in here. We know the email account. We preloaded that. So you can't fool us by putting in some other email account. We know where it's supposed to go. But you put in your contact name and you create your password. This is the key on your side that you're creating. And believe it or not, this was the biggest challenge because people would do this process and they'd say, yeah, we got the link to the digital record. What's the password? You created the password. It's your password. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. You had to. You couldn't submit without putting in a password. And that, to this day, this has been in production now for about 2 years. That's still the #1 problem, is getting people to remember what their password was that they put on this thing. But nonetheless, they go ahead and they say, okay, I'm Leah. I have a password I always use online. I know that's bad, but I do it anyway. And if they do change the email, it creates an alert for us, and we call the phone number we have associated with the school, and we say, why did you change the email? And it does happen, right? People change jobs, stuff happens. But that's how we confirm it's going where we expect it to go. And then they put in which student record they want. So I want Smith, John. The ASN is the Alberta school number, so it's an identifier that's across the province of Alberta. But if you're from outside the province, you can give us the date of birth. But we do need another piece of information to make sure we get the right student, that we're talking about the right student. So they would fill in the date of birth, and then we have this. This is our privacy person wanted us to put some kind of statement of intent on here. That if you're making this request, it's because you actually do have a right to this information. This is not the only check that we do, but it's one way we can say the person making the request has to show their good faith in making the request. So they'd click on that, and then they'd press submit. And then on our side, we would just get a line in our little app that said, this school requested this kid's record on this day, with a number of other things that we would check. And we can check on the provincial database to see if that kid is really going to that school. And if they are, we just hit approve, yes. And this is the part we did a happy dance, because it goes into Alfresco and grabs all the documents for that student, encrypts them, and puts them into that milk box. And it sends out an email saying, go there and get the documents. They're waiting for you, right? No more printing out all that content. It's there for them. They just have to click on the link, enter their password, and the documents are there. They can download them, print them, save them, whatever they need to do. And then on that external server, all the documents are deleted in 10 days. So we don't leave them up there forever, because we thought that was a risk. So it's always being cleaned off. Does this make sense? So a process that typically would take between half an hour to an hour to do now took 5 minutes. It was huge. It was unbelievable. We are able to process every request the same day we get them. And this is just phenomenal. And all that work used to be done at the school level. It's now all done centrally. So it's a piece of work we've taken off people's desks. You know how rare that is today? All we do is put more stuff on people's desks, right? We were able to pull this work off. So I was pretty excited about this. Let's see if I can go back to my website. Can I do this? Okay, so I'm not going to show you the inside because there's a lot of confidential information in there, but the inside app is really simple and straightforward. But Alfresco wanted me to put in a graph, so here's my graph. You can tell them I did do a graph. So how many records are we talking about? Well, I have lots of stats on that. It's usually between 4,000 and 6,000 record transfers a year for our district because we have a lot of students coming in and out. And what is the cost? Well, I did a bit of an estimate here. What did I say? Staff time. The big one is staff time, and I'm being really lowball on this. If we say it's half an hour per record and people are paid $25 an hour, what does that amount to? About $46,000. The printing, you know, we can do an average how many documents we expect in a folder and how much does that cost to print it. Now, some people do complain, you're pushing the cost of printing onto us, which is true, right? Particularly, the Edmonton Catholic Board's really unhappy with us because basically we're pushing all this digital content to them, and then they have to print it all out because they're in a paper world. And my response is, let's work on the province getting us a digital student record for the province, right? Like, let's get there. We all have the same pain points. But nonetheless, it has generated a few school jurisdictions are moving to a digital record, and this has been a motivator for them. And then the last one up there is postage. I couldn't believe the amount we were spending on postage, right? So we're not spending that anymore. But, you know, I show this to my senior management, and it's like, oh yeah, whatever. What have you done for me lately? So this is pretty small potatoes, I guess. But it is every year, right? It's a cost savings that's every year. All right. So I thought I would just say a few things I've learned about what makes things work. For successful implementation, you do have to get your senior management on side. You have to get them to believe it matters and it would make a difference. And keeping digital makes so much sense. Like, don't print stuff off so you can scan it. That just doesn't make sense. We had a goal that everything had to be less work for the end user. No matter what it was we were doing, our end user had to say this is less work. And I didn't think that was optional. If it was more work, it wouldn't happen. So we had to make it less work. We did fix a specific pain point, and that was the first thing we tackled were those assessment documents. And to put that in context, we do between 4,000 to 6,000 of those assessments a year at a cost of between $1,000 to $1,500 each. And my stats show that we're losing about 10% of them every year in the old paper paradigm, right? So you can figure out what it was costing us to do that, right? We just could not afford to keep losing those critical documents. So we fixed that specific pain point, and then we went on to the next one and the next one. Workflow is really powerful, and you showed some great examples of that, how that would really work. And because we didn't have a whole whack of money, we could not go back and backfill. We couldn't scan everything that was there, but that doesn't mean it's a showstopper. You can actually do a point-forward implementation and say, we'll just live in a hybrid world. Carry the paper along until we can finally retire it, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's my presentation, and if you have any questions for me or for Andrew, this is where you have to come back up here, Andrew. I'm sorry. Karen's got a question over there.
Yes.
No. So Leah, so when you put those documents into that milk chute and they're accepted at the other end, then you now have 2 full sets of records, right?
Yeah.
So do you mark the records in your repository as being sent? Like, is there some way that you identify the fact that the current records are out there and what's in your repository might not be current?
No, we always consider what's in our repository the master, and any
Okay.
other copies are just transitory or
Okay. So if it's a new school and they put it in a folder and start adding to that record, then what?
well, typically the types of documents we're talking about, we use PDF as our standard, and schools will add new documents, but they won't be adding to the PDF. They'll be just adding new
Okay,
content in
alrighty.
a new document. They don't typically, I won't say it never happens, but the records in the student record tend to be end of, how do I say that? Nothing further happens. It's the end. It's the progress report at the end of the school year. So there isn't any editing that's done on that document. It's considered over.
But new pages could be added to the folder, so do you get that back into your central repository
Yeah,
somehow?
typically those kids who go back and forth, we end up scanning the content that they send us back.
Okay.
But we keep our content. Like when we send it out, we don't delete it.
Yeah.
We keep it. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
point here is if they come back to us, I want those documents still there in the digital repository. And I won't say we don't have a problem with duplicates, because it does happen. One of the things we've done is put on the bottom of all our documents a watermark that says printed from our system. So if it comes back to us as a paper copy, we don't end up scanning it and putting it back in the system a second time. That's
Yeah.
a very common
Seems like
problem.
there's a digital endpoint solution there somewhere that,
I'm sure there
yeah,
must be. Yeah.
that would sync it all up. Okay, that was my question.
Anybody else?
So you said you had a million documents to start. Did you do the conversion of all those documents, or is it outsourced? How is it? How do you, if a new school wants to start this process, how do you recommend, going forward with the actual digitization of those documents?
So those million documents were all point forward. None of them were back file. We did also do a conversion of our HR files to Alfresco, and those we did put out to be scanned. So we did all the back file, and we used a company to do that, and I really recommend that. There's an expertise to scanning you don't have in-house. There's protocols around making sure every single sheet of paper gets scanned and imaged and indexed correctly that we were very happy to leave to the experts. So that million documents, though, is all the progress reports for every kid that are digitally created are digitally uploaded. That's the bulk of our documents or progress reports. We do scan parent-provided registration forms, birth certificates, health documentation, and these specialized assessments. We scan those. Yeah.
Okay. I just have one for Andrew. You had mentioned earlier you had two separate systems that you take an invoice to. This is back to your AP automation piece. So you take the information, you get the invoice, and then you're keying it into Oracle, and then bring it in over to Alfresco. Now you say you use Kofax Capture 10.
Yep.
You don't look to use the actual extraction capabilities of Kofax Capture 10 to
No.
be able to do that without manual?
No, we're looking to get the KTM, and then with 10.1 and try to do that extraction. It's just the invoices are so complicated. It's because they're all different, and with thousands and thousands of vendors, I don't know if it would be great if we can try it, but it's never been.
The piece that even though it's hundreds of thousands, usually there's a key element like an invoice number or information that you would be able to use as a marker point to be able to pull data from a database that already exists and pull that information. You probably don't even need to upgrade to KTM. You could probably do it with your existing system. I would talk to Zia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they probably do it right now. I went to the Episoft, and they do the same thing. But why leverage? You've already paid for a system.
Yeah.
You can pull that forward and just remove some of that manual labor that you're doing, and also the back finger that you were talking about.
No, you're right on. And as with any of these kinds of problems and implementations, obviously there's lots of ways to solve the problem, and priorities will dictate what we can get to when, of course, right? So are there any more questions? I certainly want to just simply add that this is obviously a lot of what we do for a living, and if it's of interest, we would love to speak with you. Our booth is around the corner. We're here the rest of the day and through tomorrow. we're doing a drawing, so we're going to pass this around. If you have a business card or contact information, fill this out. We can fill out this one. And so we're giving away a gift card. We're also doing sponsoring the pub crawl this evening, and there's a couple of cards on the chairs, and we have some at the booth. So I would love to see you there if that works. And thank you very much for coming and speaking. It was fabulous.
My pleasure.
Thank you.